Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here once again. I just got done watching Thor Love and Thunder. And no, I did not go see it in theaters. I watched it on YouTube. Because someone just happened to post it on YouTube, and so that's the only way I would have watched this movie. I wouldn't have gone to the theaters to support this trash. Because, I knew exactly what this movie was going to be before I even saw it. And I don't care if that sounds, I don't know, like judgmental, like, don't judge a movie before you see it. Like, that's just, why even show trailers? Why do interviews? Why have any sort of marketing towards a movie if you don't want your audience to judge the movie before it comes out and have some sort of an idea? And I had an idea, and my idea of what the movie was actually it was actually a lot higher, a lot better than the movie actually ended up being. I Even though I knew that this was all going to be shit, just like Doctor Strange 2, aka Doctor Simp 2, and then all the other MCU garbage that comes out that, completely irrelevant filmmaking, uh, if you could even call it filmmaking, because I don't really see any filmmaking in here. I just see, like, this is like the equivalent of like a product process, just like an assembly line of like a cheap product made in China. Like that's what this movie is right here. Like it was horrible. Uh, but even though I thought, this will be bad, I did have higher expectations somehow. I did still think that it could be good. I did still think, Thor is Fat Thor, and so it'll be fun seeing him go from Fat Thor to regular Thor again. And Christian Bale, he's gonna be a good villain, and maybe it'll have some good action near the end because they spend hundreds of millions of dollars. So why wouldn't the action look good? And maybe it'll be a good Thor movie since we haven't had a good Thor movie since Thor 2. Uh, Maybe it'll be better than Ragnarok, the comedy movie, the SNL comedy skit Thor. Uh, uh, Maybe the Guardians will be pretty cool. Oh, I this I didn't every time I watch these things, every time I watch an MCU garbage movie, every time I watch a DC fuck you movie, I never think that I'm going to be angry after I watch it, but then I watch it and I get really really infuriated by how these people, these corporations who own these studios, who own the copyright to this material right now, the way that they're disrespecting the material, not doing the material at all, and making something that's nothing like the material. It's absolutely sickening. And what's even more sickening is the large audience of, uh, excuse me, idiots, brainless idiots who will just sit there and accept anything they're given, even though it's nothing like the source material. And it's a disgrace to cinema, it's a disgrace to comic books, it's a disgrace to superheroes. This movie is everything what's wrong with the film industry today. If you guys want to know why there's a saying called get woke, go broke, all you need to do is look at movies like Lightyear and Thor Love and Thunder. I couldn't even get through a minute of Lightyear, by the way. I tried to. I was gonna do a fun rant video, most likely, or just a bad review, because obviously it's trash. But I couldn't even get through 1 minute, and I was like, I'm not gonna watch that. But I watched this the whole way through, because I know that these brainless MCU fanboys, the first thing these addicts would say is, "You didn't watch the whole movie, so you don't know what you're talking about." Well, let me tell you something. I didn't even need to watch the whole movie because the movie was so formulaic. It was so tired, cliche. Just everything I would have predicted would happen happened when the movie started. It took me 1 minute to know that this movie was gonna be a piece of fucking shit. Okay, the first minute of this movie, and I'm pissed off too. This movie really, really pissed me off. This is I would say now here's the thing. I do count the New Mutants as an MCU movie. That's the only MCU movie worse than this. And then something worse than New Mutants is Loki. So technically this Thor movie, I would say that this is the worst MCU movie that I've ever seen. Now, I haven't seen all the feminazi ones like Black Widow, Eternals, Captain Feminazi Marvel. I didn't watch those. I'm not watching those. But, like, I think what would be above that? X-Men Last Stand and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Those are the... So this is like the worst MCU movie in history. Why? Because the movie immediately starts off with... You have the MCU logo, and they have like this 80s rock cover of the MCU song. We're immediately starting off with cringe, because it's just like, okay, we all know what this is gonna be. It's another 80s homage. You know, it's so funny because these modern filmmakers, these modern actors, if you could even call these people actors, because I don't see a single scene of acting in this entire... Well, except I would say Natalie Portman acted in this movie, but other than... Oh, and Christian Bale, I guess, but other than that, nobody else in this movie acted whatsoever. It's a disgrace to acting, all the quote-unquote acting in this movie. So let's start off with that. But we knew that, but it's just so funny that, like, everything nowadays is just all about sucking off the 80s and just making everything the 80s, everything the 80s. And then all these people do is go online and trash 80s movies and talk about how The Breakfast Club is problematic. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is homophobic. That one movie, Ghostbusters, ooh, that movie's bad because it promotes toxic masculinity. These people, the same people who, all they do is destroy older things that are better than everything that they do. All they do is make things homages to those things. And I just find that kind of hilarious. It's almost like they don't really... I don't know. Like, isn't that weird? Like, every single thing that comes out nowadays, like, we just got done with the Black Phone. The Black Phone wasn't the 80s, but it was the 70s. But still, like, every movie nowadays is a homage to to way back when movies were actually good and made by talented people. Because, okay, so this movie starts off with a rock theme, which was already, like, just making me just want to I don't know, what's the nearest object that I could use as a weapon? Uh, well, I did get a Betty Crocker diabetes cookbook from the Goodwill bins so that I can sell it. Uh, not for me. I don't have diabetes, but I could sell it. My cat has diabetes, but I don't. And so I guess the opening theme just made me want to pick up the Betty Crocker cookbook and start smashing my head, just bludgeoning my head until blood's squirting out of my nostrils and I'm just about to pass out and die. Like, just that's how bad this opening was. This because what comes after that is so bad that, like, I never it, it's horrible. Like, it's indescribably bad. We have this narration done by Taika Waititi, the director, and we all knew what he was going to do with this movie because he told us. He said, I don't care about your. What did he say? Like, I'll shit all over your mythology. I'll shit all over your comics. Not surprising, by the way. Like, you don't even have to say that at this point. Like, you're doing your thing, raping MCU movies. You got fucking people like Margot Robbie hijacking Harley Quinn so that she can make a fucking BMX Bandits wannabe movie. And you got, everyone's doing that. Everyone's just completely disregarding the source material, except for when it comes to the female characters and the token characters. I find that's also something else that's funny, is that whenever it comes to the characters that have to do with their political agendas, they're very, very close to the source material. So in this movie, we have the female Thor, the token female Thor, Natalie Portman, and she just came back for a paycheck and also to sleep with Taika Waititi, I guess. And they stay so true to her source material, but then in regards to Thor, in regards to Gore the God Butcher, they just completely, like, rape them, like, over and over and over again, and just shit all over their comic lore and their comic mythology. And it just shows that, like, how little respect and how little regard that they hold these characters in, and how sickening that they've created this fan base of idiots who like this type of stuff, who like to go to the movies to see these characters done wrong, to see these characters done in a way where this would never be acceptable in to Stan Lee. It's a good thing Stan Lee died so that he didn't have to see this movie. It's a good thing that he died so that he didn't have to be a cameo in this movie, because I wouldn't want him to have to suffer through that. I wouldn't want to put him through that. He deserves better. All the other people involved in creating these characters and comics, they deserve better, and it's just highly disappointing and highly disgusting, frankly. I mean, so we haven't even gotten through the opening narration yet, but in this narration, and I don't care about spoilers, I'm going to spoil the fuck out of this movie. If you guys care about spoilers, get your asses out of here. Go watch the movie and go praise your Lord and Master, your slave master Disney, who likes to segregate their filmmakers. And that's something else that we could talk about too, is the fact that, like, they're starting to do that typical SJW thing where the people who are the same identity as the main characters are the only ones who can make those movies. So we just found out today that who's going to direct Captain America 4? I wonder who. Not a good director, that's who. And I'm not saying he couldn't be a good director, but he's not. I mean, his track record is trash, and we all know why he got hired. He got hired to fulfill a checklist. He got hired because he's a piece on their token chessboard. Because that's what this is all about. This is all about the studios playing their token chess game with their token chess pieces that don't matter. They'll just throw them off the board because you're meaningless to them. No matter how many followers on Twitter you get, and no matter if you get a blue check mark or not. So in this opening narration, yeah, I'm still on the opening narration because that's how fucking bad this movie is. So we start off and immediately he's doing this thing where he's talking about how Thor was sad and then he got happy because he trained and he got rid of his fat body, and so already a minute into the movie he's not fat anymore. And so, we knew that Taika Waititi didn't have the balls to have Thor be fat the whole movie, or at least half the movie. I was expecting, if I were to make a Thor for, Thor 4, I wouldn't have called it Thor Love and Thunder. I'd rather call it like fucking Thor Fist Your Mom Part 4. If I were to make Part 4, I would have had him lose weight in the middle of the movie so that we could have like half and half, half fat Thor, half fit Thor, so that it'd be more entertaining and satisfying that way. But who cares about the audience's satisfaction? The only satisfaction Taika Waititi gets wants and cares about is the satisfaction he gets from his actresses, apparently. So he talks about how he lost weight, and then we see the Guardians, and they're like doing some fighting generic computer generated bad guys, because with millions and millions of dollars, most of the stuff in this movie is computer generated, which is another thing we could talk about. The fact that these filmmakers are so lazy nowadays that they can't use practical effects. They just give all their work to some nerds in India to do their filmmaking on the computers, on the fucking old Dell computers. Because that's what this movie looked like. It looked like a straight to Disney Plus garbage movie. And he talks about how Thor lost a lot of people, and he turns it into a joke. And he talks about, oh, there was that one guy, and that other guy. Oh, and there's that one person. And he's taking these characters, and I don't know their names either, by the way, but just because I don't really pay attention to comic book stuff very much anymore, because they've become so trash that the only comics I pay attention to are Comicsgate comics, because those are the only ones that have potential. Those are the only ones who aren't gonna, the creators aren't gonna rape their characters over and over and over again, and tokenize them, and give them sex changes. But he basically just makes a joke out of all these beloved characters of Thor's, all these friends of his, these very important characters to him in the comics. And he takes them and he just calls them that guy, that person. And so making a joke and disrespecting those characters, it immediately pissed me off, because I knew that he's gonna be like this the whole movie, and this whole movie is just gonna be one giant gang rape on these characters from the comics, because that's what these characters are. I mean, you know that, right? Like, these characters were created in a comic book. They weren't created by this guy after he fucking sleeps with his actresses, okay? They were created in comic books by professional, talented artists, talented writers, talented people who had a vision for characters, okay? Not a fucking female Thor, but all the other ones. All those characters were created in comic books, actual stories. And what do? What do the people who have the copyright to Thor do? They take Thor and they make him a joke. Once again, he's a big fat fucking joke. And you know what? You know who's worse than Taika Waititi? Chris Hemsworth. Because not only can he not act, but when he decided that the only way that he would play Thor is to turn him into a joke, that's immediately when you should have fired his ass. Okay? Because I don't care how many people said, Thor's the boring one. You know, but remember back in the day, everyone said, I'm not going to go see Thor because Thor's the boring one. And then when the Avengers came out, oh, there's the boring Thor. That's what they said. Is that the fault of the stories and the character that he's based on? Or is that the fault of the fucking writers and directors? I would say it's the writers and directors, okay? It has nothing to do with the comic books. So the choice to take this character, who's supposed to be badass Omega God of Thunder, to take him and turn him into Arnold Schwarzenegger and fucking what was that movie he was in? The Conan? Oh no! I know what good comparison. And I feel bad because I think that this is even an insult to these movies with like fucking Arnold and Hulk Hogan, but Suburban Commando. This movie was very reminiscent of Suburban Commando in a bad way. And that's basically what Thor has become now. And he's such a bitch. I mean, he's such a whiny little bitch. And it's like, you know, okay, I'm not going to go there. Maybe some other time. But we start off the movie, and I don't even know what the movie's about. Like, you have Christian Bale playing Gore the God Butcher, and he has this really rushed story where he gets mad because his planet's sad and there's no food to eat, and his daughter starves to death. And so he's mad at this god. He thought this guy's so retarded that he thought a god was supposed to give food to his daughter. Like, just imagine. Like, just imagine someone so stupid that they would like start killing people because they thought that God was gonna feed them. Like, that sounds like something that actually would happen, unfortunately, nowadays. But in this movie, it's treated very seriously, where Christian Bale wanders in the forest, and he's got this makeup on looking like fucking Nosferatu, and, which, by the way, if I were ever to cast Christian Bale in a movie, I would cast him as Dracula. So it was kind of nice to see him in this almost Dracula-esque makeup. He wanders into the forest and he starts eating some fucking computer-generated fruit, and then this random god gets mad at him, like this almighty god. He suddenly he cares when Christian Bale eats some fruit. I guess it's like forbidden fruit or something. Kind of like Natalie Portman's Forbidden Fruit. So they have like an argument, and Christian Bale summons this special evil sword, and he kills this god. And then the fucking narration starts. So this movie essentially follows the same, almost the exact same formula that the Ragnarok followed. We start off and we have some catching up with Thor, where it's like, what's Thor been up to? Exposition. And I will say, Taika Waititi is good at telling visual stories. You know, he's not like the people who make The Old Man, where they're just sitting around talking to each other. And so at least when he did these montages, we did get to see, he's showing, not telling. Well, he's showing and telling at the same time. So I thought that that was at least acceptable. And I say acceptable because it's teetering on the edge of being awful. And that's what you have. You have acceptable, and then below that is awful. This is almost awful. The whole movie is awful, but at least the montages were done good, to the point where they were good montages. And then they had this really stupid conversation with Chris Pratt and Thor, where Chris Pratt's saying some bullshit about how, it would be very good, Thor, for you to feel, you need someone to make you feel shitty. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, just, what is this? Like, what is this writing? Who writes movies nowadays? Who writes movies nowadays? I mean, what a terrible line out of like the thousands of terrible lines in this fucking trash. And so, and that's not the only time we have some swearing in this movie. I mean, this movie tries to push boundaries in like ways that are totally counterproductive to the ways that you should be pushing boundaries in a fucking Thor movie. Like, this movie spends more time telling children about adults' weird sexualities than actually like giving kids good Thor stories. Like, it almost felt like that was the goal of this movie, was to like educate kids on sexualities, because that's essentially the main focus of the movie. In the middle and the end, it's very, very heavy focusing on sexuality, and it's like, this is really weird. Like, it's really weird. Like, you guys talked about James Gunn being a pedophile because he made hilarious jokes back in the day. He's not the one making a Thor movie where you're talking about two dads talking about like some weird alien sex process and having the fucking female characters ogle a naked Thor and talking about orgies. Like, James Gunn isn't doing that in Guardians of the Galaxy. So I would say that, never mind, I won't go that far, because, we are just doing a movie review. I don't do that kind of thing where I am like, oh, let's demonize that person. Let's cancel that person. I'm not like that, I think that cancel culture is cancer culture. Ironically, because we're talking about a movie about a cancer victim in Natalie Portman. So where was I? Ugh, there's so much shit to talk about in this bad movie. There's so much to talk about. I just want this to be over. I never want to think about this movie again. Like, I just want this movie. There's a part near the end of the movie where Christian Bale's sword, like, crumbles into a million pieces. Like, and then he doesn't have any sword anymore, and he's like, no! And that's what I want to happen with this movie. Like, this was such a fucking terrible movie. It was so terrible. Like, the whole movie is just joke, 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 joke. There's nothing serious in this entire movie except for, like, a scene near the end. Probably, I don't know, I guess Natalie Portman required there to be a single scene where she could have some acting she could do. Like, it felt like that was like the only scene where it was serious the whole movie near the end. But we're already ahead of ourselves, and there's so much trash to talk about this fucking movie. So the movie, as I was saying, it follows this really stupid formula that the third one followed, where the bad guy comes, he announces his presence to Thor, and then he attacks Thor, and he beats him up. But then there's a little twist. Thor meets with female Thor, and he's like, "Oh, wait a second, female Thor is here?" And then he also is fighting with Token Valkyrie, uh, who just like, she's so bad that, like, this is the only time I'm gonna mention Token Valkyrie in this movie, and she's so trash, by the way. Like, all the Token Valkyrie fans, they're probably really upset about this movie because, number one, well, I guess it won't be the only time I mention, because there's another scene where it's important to mention the female characters, especially. But she is so weak and trash that near the near the end of the movie, Christian Bale stabs her. He just gives her a little stab, and she's so fucking weak and trash that the fucking queen of Asgard has to go down to Earth and rest. Like, she's so weak and pathetic. Like, she's like, fucking Robert Pattinson's Batman had more balls than this bitch. Like, Robert Pattinson, I can't believe that he was stronger than her. Like, she's so weak and pathetic that after a single fight with a bad guy, she has to lay down in a hospital bed. Like, God, she is the worst. Like, she is just such a waste of space. Like, you could have, like, Valkyrie in the comics. She's pretty badass, right? Like, she's pretty cool. I mean, just imagine how cool Valkyrie would have been if they would have actually done the character from the comics. And just in comparison, like, just imagine telling Jack Kirby, okay, Jack Kirby, okay, Valkyrie is gonna be in Thor 4. She's gonna be black because diversity, and she's also gonna be a lesbian at one point because diversity, and near the end, she's gonna get stabbed once in a fight, and she's gonna lay in a hospital bed after that, or no, she's gonna lay in a bed in her little utopia in Asgard, which looks like a fucking San Francisco college campus. You know, just imagine Jack Kirby. He'd be like, okay, so you changed the skin color and the sexuality of this character. Why? Why don't you just make your own character? Is that too hard? And then number two, this character's so weak and pathetic that she just gets in a little fight and it just has to sit around the rest of the movie. Like, isn't that something that feminazis complain about? Like, isn't that, like, called, like, refrigerating or something? Like the thing that they did with the girlfriend in Deadpool 2. Like, isn't that something that feminazis are supposed to complain about? I guess it's okay when Taika Waititi does it because he's funny in, like, a cringeworthy Saturday Night Live 2022 type of way. So we have we have this plot structure where the bad guy makes his presence known, and I'm gonna speed up now because I gotta go eat dinner. So then he kidnaps some people. He kidnaps children of Asgard. And woo, boo-hoo. And he kidnaps them and takes them to the Shadow Universe and puts them in a cage. And it's basically a trap so that Thor and female Thor will go there and they'll get killed by him. And it's pretty stupid because he has all the advantages and still somehow they beat him. Like it seems so easy for them to beat him. Like he had like a couple of times where he overpowered, and so most of the movie is Thor trying to go and recruit people. I mean, recruit gods to be in a god army to fight Gore. It's the same exact thing as Thor Ragnarok, where the whole movie he's trying to recruit people to be in an army so that they can go fight Hela, and Hela is keeping Asgard hostage. So it's literally the same exact movie, just with shittier jokes, shittier characters, lots more agendas, and even more disrespect towards the comics than some. I mean, this movie's so disrespectful. I would say it's even more disrespectful than someone picking up an old Thor comic and pissing all over it and throwing it in the trash. Because at least he's not pissing on every single Thor comic ever made. He's just pissing on his own personal copy that he bought with his own money. So he can do whatever he wants with it. Who cares? You could never destroy every Thor comic anyway. Even though that these fuckers would at Disney, they would definitely destroy every old Marvel comic, and then they'd be like, "Oopsie," just like when Jeffrey Epstein was killed in prison. They do the same type of thing, where they'd be like, "Oopsie, the cameras in the comic book security building weren't working," and then all the comics that are good would be destroyed. And people would be like, "Oh no, I guess all we have to read are these terrible modern day comics that are written by a bunch of retarded 2-year-olds." And so this movie's just terrible. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Like, you have the thing where Thor misses Mjolnir, and he can't have Mjolnir because female Thor has to have Mjolnir. And you have all the cringeworthy stuff with that, with her stupid story where she's got cancer, and she is basically like a Breaking Bad knockoff story where she gets cancer and it's like, oh no, it's terminal, but then Mjolnir calls her and she breaks bad, and she becomes the female Thor, and I will say she's a good actress. She's a very good actress, because somehow I'm looking at this movie and I'm saying, like, you know what? Like, she is a good actress. Like, she was the only person in the whole movie. Christian Bale acted, but he was like a footnote in the movie. Like, he was basically a glorified cameo, so I couldn't even consider him. But she actually was acting, and so at least she was acting. So I would say Natalie Portman is the best part of this movie. But that would imply that the character is the best part, and the character sucks. This character is so unlikable, and so, like, just the way that they just completely diminish and demean the name of Thor. I mean, Thor is not a mantle. It's a name. He's a person, and there's no such thing as another person being Thor at all. I don't care what the 10-year-old retards on Twitter say. There's no such thing as another person being Thor. So, like, even if they're given Asgardian powers by Thor, they're still not like, are all those kids, and okay, we'll get to that. So what ends up happening is he goes to Zeus's place, and he sees all these little cutesy, like, creative, like, oh look, there's the dumpling god, and there's that, and there's that. And it's like, wow, this is so funny, and like a really cringeworthy, like, this is just, it's like, what is this, fucking fan fiction? Like, this is just not on par. This is substandard to Marvel comics. This is substandard to any story ever written in history. This is just completely nonsense. Just these stupid made-up characters that Just these random, like, jokey background characters that are created so that the audience can go, because that's what the audiences sound like. Guys, the copy that I watched of this movie, you guys would not believe the types of people who like these MCU movies. Like, they are so brain dead that when they saw Zeus get killed in this movie, one of them had to lean over and tell the other one that Zeus just got killed. And guess what happened? The person went, whoa! And it's like, God, these people, like, like, oh, God. Like, they all make the same noises at every single trigger point that the director wants them to make these noises. Like, whenever the goats started screaming, they all go like, and the audience would all go, just all at the same time. It's like, this is like watching when they put on a movie for the inmates in an insane asylum. Like, that's what it's like that scene in American Horror Story Season 2 where all the inmates have to watch that shitty religious movie from the fucking 40s or whatever the fuck that was. So, they sit down, and already Russell Crowe as Zeus, another trash character, another complete waste of space character, talking about orgies in a kid's film. Very, very bizarre. Very, very weird. I don't like that. It seems like Taika Waititi cared more about, like, staying true to, like, real Norse mythology than staying true to the comics, because it just felt like he read up a couple of Wikipedia pages on these gods, and then, like, he applied all of his little Wikipedia research to these characters, and like, ooh, that would be funny. What if we talk about that character and talk about how he likes to have god orgies? Ooh. That's what it felt like. And so there's all this running jokes about orgies in a kid's film. And then they get Thor up there, and guys, I'm not joking here. They literally rip all of Thor's clothes off, and they have this entire auditorium of gods look at his naked body, and we see his full naked body, except for the front, of course, because if they showed that, then this might as well be rated X. But the funny thing is that then the female characters, they're not given the same treatment. So I will say, like, if they were given the same treatment, I wouldn't have complained as much. But it's the typical 2022 Hollywood thing, where if you have any nudity with a female character, your movie's called perverted, it's called pornographic, it's called gross, it's called, all these things, and you're accused of, like, ooh, like, you're that type of filmmaker. Like, if you put nudity of a female character in a film nowadays. But if you do it with a male character, it's like, ooh, yeah, yay! Clap, 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 clap from the same people. It's another Hollywood double standard. And so the fact that we have the first nude scene in a Marvel film is not from Scarlett Johansson, or at least it's not balanced, where it's not like you have two characters, male and female, and we get to see them both. It's like, no, we only get to see one, and figures it's the man, because it's 2022, and we can show the man naked, but we can't show the woman naked, because that's old. That's not. We're not like that anymore. It's 2022. We got good movies like Thor: Love and Thunder and Lightyear. Whereas back then, you had movies like Back to the Future and Jaws. Ugh, those movies, ugh. We don't want any good movies like that. So, it's a big failure. Thor asks Zeus to join. Zeus won't do it because he's a fat retard. And in fact, he's the same guy from uh, Unhinged. I mean, he was almost the exact same character. It was it was pretty hilarious. Like this stupid character. Like he was just such a. All the characters in this movie were just completely goofy clowns. I hated all the characters. I hated everything about this movie, except for I guess some of Natalie Portman's acting, because good actors will still shine through bad material. Excuse me, sorry. And so then Thor steals Zeus's lightning bolt and kills him. And sorry about that. And then after that, they go to fight Gore, and it's a complete failure. Valkyrie goes to sit and lay in her bed so that she can fantasize about going to Taika Waititi's house and watching some shitty rom-coms from the 60s, like some 60s TV movie rom-coms. And then Natalie Portman, she's just laying in a hospital bed too because she's so weak and pathetic that, you know, her powers are all revolved around her having cancer and how the Mjolnir is called to her when she has cancer. It's just so dumb. And then Thor has this stupid subplot where he's like the Stormbreaker is like an actual character who gets jealous of Thor's love for Mjolnir, and it's like this is just so dumb and stupid. Stupid. We could have gotten a serious Thor movie with a serious story with Gore the God Butcher and Zeus. And instead, what do we get? We get this comedic shit. Because the fanboys cheered on Thor Ragnarok, where they took all the characters and made them into jokes. And so then oh yeah. Oh god. We got to the worst part of the movie. Thor goes to the Shadow Realm all by himself, and he goes to the kids in the cage, and he gives them all Asgardian powers, so they're all Thor too. And so you got like a thousand Thors running around, because in 2022 the Thor name doesn't matter. It's just anyone can be Thor. And so I guess Thor really isn't important or special or unique at all. It's just a mantle. It's just a thing that someone can be if they're given certain powers. Like, fuck off. Okay, none of those fucking kids are Thor. Natalie Portman isn't Thor. She's better off being Natalie Portman anyway. Because right now, I wouldn't want to be called Thor, because then I'd be associated with this fucking clown Chris Hemsworth and his little stand-up comedy routine stunt that he's doing with this movie, if you could even call it a movie. So he turns these kids into Thors, and so it's basically kind of ripping off Logan, where all the kids are fighting with him, and all the other kids have these goofy powers. But at least Logan was actually good, you know, and Logan... it did get a little goofy at the end, but still, it was pretty realistic. It was pretty good for the story that they were telling. And he easily defeats Gore. And then there's this really stupid part where, like, Thor... It's basically like a 1960s type of... And that's why I said that thing with the 1960s TV movies, which, by the way... It's not from the 60s, but there is a good rom-com from the 70s. It's about these two mentally handicapped people, played by Richard Thomas, and then the woman who plays Marge in The Simpsons. And they fall in love, and it's actually a pretty good movie. It's a lot better than this shit. And it's so good, in fact, at one point, Richard Thomas, he turns to the girl, and he says, "Excuse me. Are you retarded?" It's like this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. anything with Richard Thomas is pretty much the greatest thing I've ever seen. Uh, well, not really. Not Big and Hairy. Well, we're not talking about Richard Thomas, unfortunately. But he basically does that typical thing where, like, the hero goes up to the villain and says, "Choose love. Choose love. Love is better than hate. You can love. Don't hate. Don't be mean. Don't be evil. Love is good because you can feel shitty. And so you can love. Choose love." And Gore's like, "No, oh, maybe, okay, fine." And so it's this really cringeworthy ending where he he wishes that his daughter would come back to life, and then he dies. And then at the same time, Thor is cuddling with Jane, the female Thor, and it's like this, "Ooh, no, they're in love, but she's dying. Oh, no." It's like, who cares? I don't care. You know why? Because this whole movie has been treated like a complete joke. So when you have these moments like that, I'm not going to care at all in the slightest. Uh, so yeah, that was horrible. And then it ends with, of course, more shitty narration. Uh, and just and then we have the final thing where Thor is taking care of Gore's daughter and they're Thors together. Oh god. Like, seriously? Like, this is what we're getting? Like, people would actually say that this is better than Thor the Dark World? Are you insane? Thor the Dark World destroys this movie. I mean, just even the Thor's mom's death alone, that is so much more impactful than the female Thor dying off at the end. Like, just, oh, this movie was horrible. I hated it. I hated every single moment. It was torture to watch this. I don't care that I didn't have to pay for it. It was a complete waste of time. It was terrible. It was horrible. And also the audience that filmed this movie. Next time when you film a movie in the theater, will you please shut the fuck up so that I can hear the fucking movie that you're fucking filming, so that other fucking people on the internet on YouTube can hear it? Please? Okay, thank you. And then there was one point where it was really irritating. This person was like, they were like rustling their camera around, and it's like you're trying to hear the dialogue, and it's just like all muffled because they're like putting the camera down their pants and shit so that the fucking guy with the fucking orange flag, the orange fucking lava lamp thing can't see them. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, why even take a fucking video of the movie? Like, people want to actually watch the movie. They don't want to sit through whatever the fuck that was. So in terms of food, I think you guys know what I'm going to rate this movie. I will say it's not the worst movie of the year. It is slightly better than other movies, just by default. But that's not really saying much. The best parts of the movie were Natalie Portman and Christian Bale's acting. For a couple of scenes, everything else was complete garbage. But still, I would give this movie... You know what I thought about constantly with this movie? Pop-Tarts. Because as a kid, you loved Pop-Tarts. But when you grow older, it's like you go back... Or just breakfast cereal in general. Like, you go back and you realize, like, this is really gross. Like, I'm so glad I'm not eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast anymore. Because this is just, it's garbage. It's just like eating a square of garbage. Especially the newer flavors. Like, they did these ones for like a Jolly Rancher and Crush Soda, and it's awful. It's so artificial, and it's so and this movie is artificial. This movie is disingenuous, because I'm telling you guys, the director of this movie, he could have made a Norse mythology movie, and I would have been fine with a lot of the stuff in it. I would have thought it was a better movie than this. But the fact that he chose to do a Thor movie, this should not be a Thor movie at all. This is not Thor in the slightest. This is trash. And Chris Hemsworth, he needs to stop being Thor so that an actor can come in and play serious Thor, and Chris Hemsworth can just go play Thor at children's birthday parties, because that's the only place where I would hire him to play Thor. So anyways, please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of this piece of fucking shit, and then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to hear more honest reviews, because I'm the only one who's going to be honest about this fucking piece of shit movie. Bye everybody, see you soon.